my biases are what kept me from seeing Islam for what it was sooner. I wanted it to be the truth. But if you're gonna consider another teaching to base your life on, you can't just put yourself in an echo chamber where everybody just praises their own beliefs. 70% of Muslim countries are below the poverty line. If we view Sharia as a social experiment, then it failed miserably. If Mohamed having sex with a 9-year-old isn't pedophilia, please define pedophilia to me. The Prophet had a wooden bowl in which he used to urinate. The members of the house replied, Bara, the slave girl, drank it. The Prophet replied, surely she has protected herself from the fire. This is the kind of delusion you end up in if you believe any man is infallible.
Please don't accept Islam. Hey, Islam says kill, destruction, and murder. Please don't accept Islam.
Fight for the cause of Allah. If they refuse, then we have to fight. And if we fight you, then we capture you, you become our slaves, and we take your land, and you take because you refuse, I give you 2 good options. This is the strength of Islam.
Islam was sold to me and many other people as the antidote to the confusion and corruption of the modern world. It was sold as the pure and simple word of God, the last source of truth in a failing society. There's a staggering amount of people joining Islam right now, and most of which are young men. It makes perfect sense. We're looking for the truth, and we're sick and tired of the bullshit ideologies that we're being force-fed that just make us weak, compliant, and leave us without purpose. We know that if we want purpose in our lives, we have to build them on a foundation of truth. And that's the illusion that Islam offers. Being raised in a Ukrainian Pentecostal church, I've seen my fair share of bullshit and hypocrisy. I had a lot of questions that I never really got answers for. I became an atheist for a while. I spent some time looking into Eastern religion. I even had like a new age phase where I did all kinds of hallucinogenic drugs like LSD, DMT, mushrooms, you name it. But I could never shake my belief in a creator. I tried, but the world didn't make any sense outside of a creation narrative to me. The first thing that sparked my interest in Islam was the idea of the oneness of God. No matter how many times it was explained to me, the Christian Trinity just seemed like complete BS. How could God be praying and asking mercy from himself in the garden? If Jesus is God, then why didn't he know when he was going to return? Islam on paper categorically denies any comparison to God. From the outside, the message seems logical and easily digestible.
Wrong.
When I first started learning about Islam, I had this giddy excitement, like I finally found the truth. I even started to debate certain Muslim points with my Christian wife. Honestly, I would say that my biases are what kept me from seeing Islam for what it was sooner. I wanted it to be the truth. But if you're gonna consider another teaching to base your life on, you can't just put yourself in an echo chamber where everybody just praises their own beliefs. The more I learned about Islam, the more hypocrisy and just deceit and straight up hate that I uncovered. And when I asked questions, all I found was intellectual dishonesty. The first thing that threw me off and kind of made me doubt was the not so indirect worship of Muhammad. For a religion that's all about the oneness of God, they sure do deify their prophet. Of course, they deny this all the time, but it's a fact. You can't draw or insult the prophet in any kind of way without facing the possibility of violent retaliation. There's a hadith that states, if you don't love Muhammad more than your own family, then you're not a true believer. But if that doesn't seem like worship to you, let me read a few verses out of the Quran. So this is written in Sahih al-Bukhari. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Sahih al-Bukhari 2731. Urwa started looking at the companions of the Prophet. By Allah, whenever Allah's messenger, Muhammad, spat, the piece of spit would fall in the hand of one of them. They would rub it on their face and skin. Muslims say that they don't worship Muhammad, but what kind of treatment is this? If that's not idolatry or worship, I don't know what is. Moving on. This one is written in Al-Qaga Al-Kubra 2:252. The Prophet had a wooden bowl in which he used to urinate, which was placed under his bed. One night he searched for it but did not find it and asked for it, saying, "Where's the bowl?" The members of the house replied, "Bara, the slave girl of Salama, drank it." The Prophet replied, "Surely she has protected herself from the fire with a great wall." I mean, what more is there to say? Can you even imagine how this slave girl or other people that lived during his time viewed this person? I mean, how disgusting of an act to drink somebody's urine. And worse than that, he praised her for it. He said she did a good thing. They claim that this man is a sinless and living example to emulate. There's a verse in the Bible that I resonate with a lot, and it goes something like, there is no one good except God. If you put your faith in the goodness of anybody except God, it's gonna end badly. Every person to ever walk this earth was full of mistakes. It's just the base human condition. And making Muhammad an exception to this rule elevates him above humanity. Muhammad had sinned just like anybody else, if not much worse. Which leads me to my next point. As some of you may know, I'll reiterate, Muhammad married a 6-year-old girl and had sex with her at the age of 9. And he was in his 50s, might I add. Despite how completely disgusting and not human that is, it gets worse. Muslims will argue till they're blue in the face that age of consent is just a social construct. That Muhammad's relationship with 9-year-old Aisha was not pedophilia. And some go even further and say that if the law allowed it today, it'd be permissible under Sharia. Listen to this well-known Muslim apologist argue that it's even permissible at the age of 5.
If you look just at the Quran, you will get the indication that you can have sexual intercourse with a 5-year-old. Wait a minute, what did you say? The Quran doesn't say anywhere in the Quran that the woman has to be pubescent. I dare you to find one verse in the Quran.
I mean, what more is there to say? Have they ever met a 9-year-old girl? Please, somebody explain this to me. There are no post-pubescent 9-year-olds. I mean, were you born yesterday? When people make insane arguments like this, I realize that they live on a completely different planet, and they're just way too far gone to even debate with. This may be hard for some of you to believe, so I'll drop some links in the description with some of the biggest Muslim apologists reiterating the same thing. This is the kind of delusion you end up in if you believe any man is infallible or can do no wrong. If Muhammad having sex with a 9-year-old isn't pedophilia, please define pedophilia to me. For the religion of peace, they sure do have a lot of violent ideas and behaviors. I'm not gonna paint all Muslims with a broad brush because of idiots like this.
The patriarch has authority to physically discipline members of his family. This discipline, including his wives, women should be beaten.
And this.
And we get prisoners of wars. What do we do with them? We enslave them. Oh, this is against human rights. No. This is human rights.
I know that many aren't like this, but there are violent ideas embedded deeply into the religion. Let's start with death to apostates, capital punishment for people that leave the faith.
This is a part of our religion. There's a reason to it. Yeah? There's a reason why there's a capital punishment. Because people like you, little weaklings, who leave their religion and cause corruption in the land by spreading it, the capital punishment in Islamic law would be applied to you. We have no doubt. And we're proud of that.
This pervasive religion wants to burrow itself so deeply in your mind that you can't even go through your own path in life.
And we're proud of that.
Sometimes people fall out of something, come back into it. Apparently, if you do that in Islam, they'll just... If you think that these are archaic ideas that no one actually lives by, you would be wrong. And it doesn't end with death to apostates.
The wisdom behind putting execution as a punishment for killing others, for spreading corruption in the earth, for an adulterer, for someone who does the act of homosexuality. This is not my call. This is the law of Allah.
This guy right here is one of the biggest Muslim apologists on YouTube. Just listen to the religion of peace in action.
Scared, just like David Wood before the debate. Yeah, he was scared. You saw how he was petrified, shaking. Just like you wouldn't come near me, not even in my proximity. You know you're gonna get corrected, boy. You're nothing, boy. You're finished already. Look at me. Look at me, you know you're done.
Who is this guy? Mohamed Hijab is a self-proclaimed traditionalist Islamic debater who wants to suck your wife's breasts. I'm sorry, that's what he said. Insulted me, my mother, and my sister in very disturbing ways. Instead of pointing the finger at Islam and the Muslim community, a finger he will surely need to fulfill his conjugal obligations, or indeed the incestuous activity he may be engaged in with mommy and sister.
What?
Why are you so angry, bruh? You need to get some shit figured out and under control.
When you see me and you lock eyes with me, I'll make sure that you come inches away from excreting yourself. You will do nothing but submit, cockroach on the internet.
I completely understand that violence and aggression has its time and place, but this ain't it. But how can you get this unhinged online, especially when you're dealing with spiritual matters, and still expect people to respect anything about your opinion? It's just so childish and proves nothing. I'm an MMA fighter, but you're a big boy, I couldn't beat you up. But I train with some heavyweights that would absolutely bully you, slap the face off of you. And they're atheists. What does that prove? For having such extreme views, Muslims are the biggest victims on the internet. They leave their failed shithole Islamic countries behind and immigrate to secular democracies, only to bitch and moan how Islamophobic everybody is. They cry that their free speech is being infringed on, while openly spewing their hate in intention to establish Sharia and subjugate the people that took them in. The arrogance is mind-blowing to me. They're that guest that you invite into your home that will slit your throat when you're weak or not paying attention. 70% of Muslim countries are below the poverty line. If we view Sharia as a social experiment, then it failed miserably. It was a worldview that only worked in the Dark Ages. I mean, it was established during the Ottoman Empire, which was one of the most powerful and vast empires in all of history. Sharia just became outdated and withered away. I mean, with all the countries that have Sharia law, no extreme Muslim needs to jump ship and go to a secular democracy, right? But there's nothing worse than an extremist white convert living in the degenerate West. Why don't you save your soul and go to Iran? I want to close this out by saying that I know that a lot of Muslims are great people. The Quran becomes a beautiful book if you view it as another culture's understanding of God. The way Muslims view Muhammad is, in my opinion, by far the biggest issue with Islam. I'll continue reading and studying the Quran just like I would with any other religious text, but with the understanding that it was written by a 7th century warlord who had his own failings. It may seem on the surface that Islam is compatible with conservatism, red pill, or even Christianity, but it just isn't. The ultimate goal in Islam is to establish rigid Islamic law with violent conquest if necessary. I mean, obviously, that's what the almighty Muhammad did. If somebody can provide some logical reasoning for these texts and what they actually mean, I'll reconsider everything I said. I think that would be tough though, considering some of the accusations held against Muhammad. But nevertheless, I am willing to hear people out. If anybody has any good arguments to any of the points that I went over, drop a comment down below. Also, hit that like button, subscribe if you liked the video, and as always, much love, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Dima Talks.
Don't raise your voice at me and think that's gonna be okay. I'm not one of these dudes over here. You understand me? I'm not the one. I will. I'm not the one.
Adulterer.